prematurely and came back and hit me right in the lip. So okay, we're trying our hand at pizza. What am I doing wrong when I make my feather sticks? Because I cannot get those curly shavings that you get.
So there's a couple things that we may not be doing wrong at all, but the wood has a grain to it, and the grain isn't parallel to the stick. So oftentimes I find that the grain you may find runs out this way, or it may run out this way. So you'll find that you may struggle to get a feather stick if you flip the stick around 180 degrees, or flip the stick this way 180 degrees. It could be like night and day.
So you're going with the grain. So
you got to really think about what the grain is doing and then work with that. And then the other thing that I do sometimes, if my tip is up, I'll get a feather that runs in one direction.
Okay.
If my tip is down, I'll get a feather that runs the other direction.
Okay.
Now, to me, that's not as natural to do, kind of tip down. So they're a little more coarse that way.
But maybe my knife is at too great an angle to the wood too.
Again, you're just trying to just barely shave off. And so then you're always thinking about the ridges. So I've got a flat here and a flat here, but there's a ridge here in the middle.
That's
so
what you're taking.
that peak is really what I want to kind of focus on. And these are a little bit coarser. And the other thing, that this stick is a little bit short, but a longer stick helps because you can really kind of get into the flow, really use your full length.
Cool, thanks.
I'm just looking at the difference. When I try this side, I'm getting really coarse grain.
Yeah.
And I think the grains are running out this way, so I'm digging into them more.
Okay.
But if I roll over, I'm getting a much finer slice just by rotating 180 degrees. I'm getting a much finer curl.
I also think my knife needs to be sharpened.
I've already been talking to Avalon Edge. He's going to sharpen us.
Because I've had it for 3 years now.
I think so.
I haven't been very kind to it.
Haven't been kind to it?
No.
You have an Eldris, which has a funny compound edge, which I'm not familiar with how to sharpen. So I'm going to take it to the pros.
I like it. I like the size of it, the blade, and the feel in my hand. So what are you talking about when you say the edge?
Well, it has one style of edge here, and then it changes into something else here.
I see that.
And I'm not familiar with... I've never tried to sharpen it. So I would rather take it to a pro than have me screw it up. Because there is not mine. Okay.
How's it going? Are we having fun? Are we having fun? Night number 2?
Weather is a little miserable. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, yes, we're having fun.
Mm-hmm. It's good.
Date night number 2.
Wow, I didn't think about that. Back-to-back date nights. I'm cheap date, aren't I? I'm gonna do a Blair Witch video. This is not what we want to be doing at 12 o'clock. So, I've been sleeping through this. But the wind is pulling the pegs up in the tent. It is pretty violently windy out there. see. Darrell went out to drive down a few more heavier pegs to see if that would hold the tent. It's rain mixed with snow. So he tells me. I'm lucky enough to not be moving from my bunk. Just look at this. That's nuts. We got 7 hours or so before the sun comes up, so we're gonna ride it out. The flue was glowing red downstairs. He hasn't shut his eyes for good reason. So we'll see. How's that look?
I changed a couple pegs and added 2 rocks.
Added rocks to the tops of the pegs.
I did that earlier. I added rocks to the flaps.
Okay.
I just wonder if I can get a flap on the door.
We can't pull the flaps in because of the precipitation, right? There's rain and snowing out there. So we pull the flaps in. This is crazy. We haven't done a night like this in the tent before. Is she gonna hold?
I hope. The steel pegs aren't holding very well on the ground. I'll put in some ABS ones. Retightened them. With hope.
She's pretty wild, eh? We've not tented in wind like this before. Crazy. I've been sleeping through it, but maybe now's your turn. What's the concern about the stove? Is the wind coming with that bent stove pipe up there?
I think the wind is coming against my wall. The stove pipe is facing out that way.
But remember today, before it got really, really windy, there was puffs of smoke coming out of the damper there. I've never seen that before. Okay. Let's see how that goes. She definitely seems to be holding a little better.
I got rocks all along the skirt, all through here.
Okay.
So I can't get the rocks over there because I need to get in and out.
Unless we put rocks on the inside. Or put our bags or something over there. It is wild. Like, that is whipping. Never a dull moment.
That corner over there is, they're all loose. Everything's loose.
Everything's loose.
like we're digging in the sand.
Even if you double peg, it's not helping. It's midnight.
It's literally like we're just pounding in the sand.
It's midnight, 12:30. Darryl went out. He hasn't slept a wink because his tent hasn't stopped rocking and rolling all night. So he's replacing the metal tent pegs with the heavier plastic ones in hopes that it'll hold the tent down, but it's not working. This is his second time out in the last 20 minutes. We've let the fire go out because the wind is coming up pretty bad. And at times it's snow squall mixed with rain out there, so it's a pretty nasty night. We just hope to be able to stick it out till daylight so we can pack up, or hope that the wind is going to break in the next little while. The adventures in the outdoors. One of the disadvantages of being in an area where we have no cell coverage or signal is that we can't log on to see what the winds are like and when they're supposed to go down. Just rocking and rolling. Think we'll be able to stick it out for the night?
I don't have a choice.
Can't walk out of here in the dark. So, this is our last update. We are hastily packing. The tent is lifted off the ground, as you can see, and we're just giving the stove some time here to hopefully cool down before we put it all in the vehicle and make our hour-and-a-half trek home. Daryl's gone to the car with one last load. This is not like anything else. Staying in a tent before. All right. It's Daryl with the stove. You can barely stand up here. It's so windy. We definitely made the right choice by the time Daryl stopped the battle with the pegs. Everything but a couple guidelines were in the ground, so we had no choice but to call it a night. Okay, this is it. We loaded the stove in the car and we are en route. It is 1:32 in the morning. I've had some sleep. Daryl, however, has not. So, what were you doing in and out of the tent, fighting with pegs?
So at about 11 o'clock, it got the wind really started to pick up, and it started the absolute downpour. So I tried to hunker down for a while. It was so noisy. I was no way I was going to be able to get to sleep. And then I guess around 12, I noticed that the tent pegs that were holding into the corners of the tent were starting to fail, and the tent is now in one corner it was starting to flap. So I got up and I swapped out pegs. I was using steel nails at one point, and then I started putting on ABS pegs. But because we pitched on just a sandy gravel ground, nothing would hold. But at that time then, I couldn't put a different peg back in the same hole. I couldn't move the pegs side to side.
You had boulders down on top of the pegs too.
We put boulders down. We put boulders on all the flaps. There was just nothing I could do could keep them down. So I guess then, what, 12:30, we finally decided to...
I think for me the biggest fear was we had a fire in. We close the damper because the pipe outside the tent was squeaking and rocking and rolling, and inside a few times earlier tonight she gave off a couple of puffs of smoke through the damper, and so it was clear that the wind was coming in through, and I hadn't seen that before, not like that. So my biggest fear was fire, of course. We didn't have a lot of wood in the stove, but there was enough hot coals in there. You know, just the thought of the pipe coming down on us or something like that, that would have been not good, to say the least.
It's really the only thing that keeps the stovepipe in place is the stove on the bottom and the tent roof. Other than that, it's not connected anywhere else. And with the tent lifting, I was afraid that it was going to slowly start to work the stove out of the stovepipe out of the stove box. And it was, you could hear it wiggling.
Yeah, it wasn't a good feeling for sure.
So there was no sleep.
The jack, I guess, that velcros to the roof when we don't have the stove in the tent, that's actually burnt.
Is it?
Yeah, I noticed that when we were taking it down. I was securing things before we packed it up. There's a crescent-shaped burn on the canvas, so yeah, definitely not a good feeling.
Even after all that rain.
Yep. Imagine if it wasn't wet outside. So yeah, Daryl just said it's the first time he's ever had to leave in the middle of the night. And you've done a lot of this, a lot more than I have.
Like maybe if we had a different tent peg, some type of a screw or some type of anchor, maybe we could have lasted. But I think the ground is saturated and it's starting to turn to mud, and it just feels like you're pounding a tent peg into pure sand.
We checked the wind conditions since we got on the road here. And for those of you watching, we're driving the southern shore right now on the Avalon Peninsula in Newfoundland. And the wind gusting was up to, well, it was clocked at 85 kilometers. So, yeah, it was pretty gusty. And we had no cell signal down there, so we had no idea. We couldn't log on to say, you know, we'll fight the good fight for an hour and then the wind's gonna taper off. We didn't have that information at our disposal, so yeah, leaving was the only choice, really. It was a good night. It was a fun night. It was an exciting night.
It's a story.
It's a story.
Date night.
Date night number 2. Driving home at 1:37. So revisiting our teenage years, honey. Hello, everybody. It's 2:11. We are almost home. 20 kilometers, 25 kilometers maybe. So, question for you. Our winter tent, when we did the research to buy it, we opted to go with a version with no floor. Any regrets after tonight?
No.
Because certainly if there was a floor in it, we wouldn't have been worried about it taking flight. No?
There's still no... The only pole keeping the tent up is still the main center pole, so a floor may not necessarily keep the walls down. We need it's the tent pegs that failed.
Yeah, no, I know that.
And I don't know if the floor would help keep the walls down.
I like the idea of the winter tent without a floor, just simply for
Cleaner.
cleanliness. And also, I don't know, the idea of having a wood-burning stove in a tent with a floor in it kind of makes me nervous a little bit. Anyway, just a thought. Of all the challenges, though, of this last weekend, I mean, I took a tree to the face. Look at that bruising. It's pretty brutal. What? I took a tree to the face. How does that...
It was a twig.
It was... You weren't even there. It was a massive branch.
It was a twig.
Newfoundland roots now with some tall tails around this branch. Well, listen, it left a mark, and a pretty significant one. I almost lost 2 teeth.
Almost.
It's true.
All are the tales that fishermen tell.
You want to keep going?
No.
No.
All are the tales that fishermen tell when summer's work is done. Of fish they caught, of birds they've shot, of crazy risks they've run. But never did a fisherman tell a tale so tall be a half a mile, as Grandpa Walcott told that night in the smoke room on the Kyle.